Uryu's Schrift, designated by the letter A, the Antithesis, is also known as the perfect anti-setup in Japanese. His Schrift allows him to designate between any two targets, and completely reverse anything that has already occurred between the two of them. It's best demonstrated in his battle against Yhwach. Uryu was badly hurt, to the point where he was nearly defeated, but the moment he activates the Antithesis, he reverses everything that had already happened in the battle so far. Suddenly, Yhwach becomes the recipient of enormous injuries, while Uryu is completely fine. For another example of this Schrift, if Uryu becomes trapped by an enemy ability, he can reverse their situations, freeing himself and ensnaring his opponent. The Balance, wielded by Jugram Yhwach, is also known as World Harmony in Japanese. The balance allows Yhwach to balance the scales of fortune and misfortune within his vicinity. Basically, if a person experiences good fortune within a battle setting, Yhwach can convert that fortune into misfortune and redistribute it. For example, when Yhwach kills his allies Sternritter, Kangdu, who after receiving a surge of good fortune after surviving his battle with Hisugaya, successfully makes his way back safely, that counts as good fortune for him. And to balance this good fortune, Yhwach tries to attack Kangdu, but he blocks him with his iron, which constitutes as an additional good fortune for Kang, while also being a misfortune for Yhwach. Yhwach can take the misfortune from this encounter, and paired with the additional good fortune that Kangdu had accumulated, he can then use it to activate his Schrift, balancing the scales and allowing him to cleave right through Kangdu, despite his earlier failure. Later on, Yhwach reveals his spirit weapon, the Front Shield, which is able to absorb all misfortunes that he experiences, including injuries. When Yhwach activates the balance, he can redirect the accumulated misfortunes stored in the Front Shield back into his opponents, effectively inflicting harm on them while simultaneously mitigating his own harm. Pernida Parkinjaz, the Compulsory, also known as compulsory execution in Japanese, allows Pernida to shoot nerves from his fingers into an opponent's body, which is able to control their movements and almost instantly contort them, as seen with the arms of Yoruichi and Kenpachi. This control extends to Pernida's own body as well, allowing for rapid regeneration and the ability to create sentient clones by detaching its fingers. Pernida can extend its nerves into non-living things, allowing it to manipulate and shape them. It can create giant arms and hands from the ground or nearby buildings to attack its foes. If one of Pernida's fingers is cut off, he can still use the compulsory from that finger remotely by opening an eye on the knuckle before attacking. Pernida's true ability, however, is evolution, and it ties closely with his Schrift. It's a power that allows him to quickly adapt during battles, learning from anything its nerves connect with, rapidly evolving based on the body, mind, and abilities of an enemy. Before we continue this video, if you like my informational content covering both anime and manga, it would help a ton by subscribing and hitting the bell so I can continue making videos like this. Okay, that's it. Askin Naklavar's Schrift, known as the Death Dealing or Lethal Dose, gives him complete control over lethal doses, which is the amount that something would take to cause death without fail. If he ingests something into his body, either by drinking it or suffering a big attack, Askin can then raise or lower the lethal dosage of that substance for himself or anyone in his vicinity. For example, by consuming his own blood, he can then decrease the lethal dosage of the blood in his opponent's body, thus making it more fatal to them. Similarly, after surviving a powerful explosive attack from Yushiro Shihoin, Askin then survives the attack and is able to change the dosage of Yushiro's Reiatsu, raising it for himself greatly and making himself immune to all future attacks from Yushiro. Essentially, with the Death Dealing, Askin can pretty much avoid any attack that doesn't kill him instantly. Not only that, by further increasing the lethal dosage of a substance he has consumed, his body will begin to heal itself as if it were never harmed in the first place. Additionally, Askin can use the Death Dealing in various ways, including techniques such as the Gift Ball and Gift Ban, which allows him to combine substances and poison his enemies. In his Quincy Volstanditch form, his ability adapts automatically to any change in substance. Bambietta Basturbayan's Schrift, designated by E, the Explode, or known as Bombing Rain in Japanese, allows her to transform anything her reishi touches into bombs, both living and non-living. Her ability allows for omnidirectional attacks. As Bambietta does not have to actually touch a target, she can target specific enemies or large areas, causing massive destructive damage. The Explode is further empowered by her Volstanditch. In this form, her wings can generate concentrated spheres of spiritual energy, which are released in massive volleys, spreading across the battlefield. Asnoth's Schrift, the Fear, allows him to eject pure terror to anyone subject to it. Victims experience their deepest and most primal terrors brought to life before their very eyes through vivid hallucinations. The fear is so intense that average Shinigami can die from heart failure due to the sheer physiological trauma that it can bring. Stronger and more experienced Shinigami can resist a while longer, but Asnoth not, is confident, and believes anyone will eventually break under the overwhelming terror of his power. The fear continues to build until the victim completely loses their grip on reality. When using the fear, a black substance is unleashed from Az's thorns, which can travel through some objects in order to chase its targets. In his Volstandich form, even just looking at Az not would trigger the fear effect, as the fear directly penetrates their optical nerves, even if they close their eyes. It makes the fear even worse in the darkness itself. Lil Todo Lampert wields G, the Glutton, or known simply as gluttonous in Japanese. It's a disturbing ability that focuses on consumption. Her mouth can transform into a massive set of jagged teeth that can stretch and warp to consume anything in her path. However, as a side effect, this ability leaves Lil Todo in a constant state of hunger. According to the Bleach novel, Can't Fear Your Own World, it expands on the glutton a bit, stating that Lil Todo gains the power of anyone that she eats. Basby's Shrift, H, the Heat, or simply as Scorching Heat in Japanese, allows him the ability to generate and control flames using reishi and regulate his body temperature, all with incredible precision, demonstrated by his ability to instantly melt ice, including Hitsugaya's massive ice blade with mere body heat. Basby uses his Shrift through various combat techniques. Burner Finger 1 manifests as a concentrated flame blast that strikes with a bullet-like precision. He can escalate the destruction further with Burner Finger 2, which creates a massive flame slash. And Burner Finger 3 allows him to melt surfaces and transform them into flowing lava. And finally, Burner Finger 4 manifests as a massive flaming broadsword that can cause explosions and can slice through entire buildings. His ultimate technique, Burning Full Fingers, unleashes a torrent of flame capable of engulfing multiple opponents. Kang-do bears the Shrift I, the Iron, but simply known as Steel in Japanese. This Shrift is pretty simple. It's a defensive ability that allows him to harden his skin to become practically invulnerable while it's active. The Iron is strong enough to withstand the sword strikes of 10th Division Captain Toshiro Hisugaya without a scratch, and initially survive Hashwalth the Blade at point blank. Kilge Opi's Shrift, J the Jail, manifests through his archery. His arrows possess the power to generate an impenetrable prison that can encase his chosen targets. This reishi constructed cage creates perfect isolation. Those trapped inside become completely cut off from the external world, with their spiritual energy signature masked and their voices unable to penetrate the barrier. The jail is incredibly strong, successfully containing even the most devastating attacks, like Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, unleashed by him while wielding his Bankai. The arrows fired while using the jail can also be used to seal doorways. The prisons will continue to exist even if the user dies. In addition to trapping opponents, Kilge can use the jail to effectively seal off passages and entrances. The only people that can't be held by the jail are fellow Quincy's. BG9's Shrift represents the letter K, but unfortunately it remains unknown. There is speculation, however, that it may represent K, the knowledge, and it is based on BG9's ability to analyze and gather data during combat, demonstrated through his battle against Soifon. After getting hit by her Mukyu Shunko, BG9 was able to devise a counter strategy, piercing through her wrist to cut off her Ryatsu, preventing the further use of her ability. Pepe Rakabrada, designated with L, the Love, is a disturbing ability. It allows Pepe to fire heart-shaped attacks at opponents when he forms his hand into a heart shape. If a target gets hit, they become completely infatuated with Pepe and will follow any order that he gives, even to the point of attacking one's allies or fighting someone far stronger than themselves. The Love's power extends beyond people. It can control anything that has a heart, even Zanpakuto's, as demonstrated when Byakuya's Senbon Sakura turned against him, attempting to attack its own master. Victims under the Love will continue to fight even if wounded. This ability does have one notable weakness, however. The Love cannot affect beings that can't understand the concept of love, making them invulnerable to the Shrift's effect. Gerard Valkyrie possesses M, the Miracle. His Shrift allows himself to manifest miracles by drawing upon the feelings and thoughts of those around him. It allows him to accomplish seemingly impossible feats in situations where the cards are stacked against him and victory would be usually unattainable. For example, when Gerard was faced with almost the entirety of the Gote 13 alone, his body transformed to allow him to survive what seemed to be an impossible battle. Likewise, when the gigantic Gerard attempted to find the Vizord, he himself states that it would be virtually impossible to find them since he couldn't sense the Ryatsu at all. But the very moment he says that, he finds them all immediately thanks to his Shrift. Gerard's Shrift kinda defies reason itself. When those around him begin doubting their ability to defeat him, Gerard is able to manifest their fears through his god-sized ability. He can convert any damage inflicted, even fatal ones, and make himself stronger and larger than before. If Gerard loses a limb, it would automatically reform in a flash of light with visible veins If he is cut in half vertically, Gerard would simply stitch his body back together. Apart from that, much like the way Gerard can manifest the fears of his enemies, he can also manifest the hopes of his allies through his blade, the Hoffnung. When Hoffnung is damaged by an enemy, it instantly reflects any damage it takes back onto the attacker. Robert Acutron's Schrift is unfortunately unknown, but it may be N, the Navigate, which is an ability that allows him to identify and exploit blind spots. We see this when Robert appeared behind Kyoraku to land a hit, or when he seemingly teleported instantly next to Ichigo, aiming a gun directly at his head. Driscoll Bursi's the Overkill grants him a pretty straightforward but powerful ability. It allows him to grow progressively stronger with every kill he makes. It works regardless of who or what he kills, enemies, allies, or even random beasts, which each kill adding to his growing strength. Meninus McCallan's Schrift, P, the Power, basically just grants her superhuman strength. Meninus can effortlessly lift massive blocks above her head, sending it crashing down, and even sending Kenpachi flying with just a punch. She can grab someone like Ichigo and drag him through multiple buildings without a sweat. And finally, she can also drastically increase the size of her muscles if she so wants. Berenice Gabrielli's Schrift, the Question, allows her to make her opponents question everything about themselves or their abilities, all by speaking to them. However, this power is ineffective if the target cannot hear her voice. Jerome Gizba's Schrift, the Roar, allows him to morph into a massive ape-like creature. Within this form, he can create strong and powerful roars that unleash devastating shockwaves that are enough to obliterate nearby Shinigami's heads. His roar was so loud that it could nullify other abilities, like Berenice's The Question, so it was kind of funny that they were put in the same division. Mask Demasculin's S, the Superstar, or known simply as Hero in Japanese, allows him to gain in power through cheers and support from his fans. If spectators cheer for Mask, he increases in strength, stamina, and even healing abilities. If Mask receives enough support, he's able to transform into a more bulkier and powerful form. Quite interestingly, his Schrift is actually linked to his fan, James, who's actually the real Sternritter, while the Mask is just a heroic projection of James himself. Their existences are linked. If Mask is alive, then James will revive indefinitely. But if Mask dies, while James is also still dead, both Quincy will remain dead. Candace Catnip wields T, the Thunderbolt, granting her mastery over lightning. She can create them from her hand and throw lightning bolts at her opponents, or she can call them directly from the sky, which are incredibly more potent. If Candace is in danger, she can transform herself into lightning to evade attacks. In her Volstanditch form, she can use fragments of her wings as lightning-charged weapons to use as a blade or projectile. Nanana Najakup's Schrift, You, the Underbelly, is a pretty weird Schrift. It's a pretty interesting ability. It requires careful observation of opponents, and after studying a target for a period of time, Nanana can launch a Reishi U that attaches to its target and covers them in a morphine pattern grid. This grid reveals weak points in the target's Reiatsu, and by jabbing or blasting at these points, Nanana can then expand these vulnerabilities and cause increasingly more damage. His Schrift proved powerful enough to temporarily render someone like Aizen unconscious for some time. Gremmy Thamos, V the Visionary, is an insanely broken Schrift. It allows Gremmy to manifest his imagination into reality. For example, if he imagines that the bones in someone's arm are made of cookies, it becomes cookies. He can pretty much create anything he wants simply by imagining it. He can summon real-world weapons to his side, spawn in lava or water into the battlefield, heal his own wounds, or even create sentient life, or even the vacuum of space. By using clones, he can amplify his imaginative power and widen the scope of what's possible for him to achieve. And we can see this. During that time, he summoned an enormous meteorite that threatened to destroy the entire Seirete. This broken power does come with its weaknesses. His creations can disappear if his concentration breaks, reverting to how it was before. And also, Gremmy can even accidentally imagine his own death if he's forced into a situation that forces him to imagine it. And when he dies, anything that he has created goes along with him. One of Gremmy's creations, Grenael Lee, has a quote-unquote Schrift of his own. The Vanishing Point enables him to become completely imperceptible. Opponents can forget he had even attacked them, or even forget he existed at all. His power is split into 3 different versions that he can swap from freely. Version 1 causes the vanishing of his physical appearance, rendering him invisible. Version 2 makes Guanael's entire existence vanish, effectively rendering him intangible. And finally, version 3 allows Guanael to erase his existence from his opponent's minds completely, making them forget he was ever present. Another one of Gremmy's creations, Shaz Domino, wields the Schrift, the Sigma, and we don't actually know much about this power, except in the supplementary material, 13 Blades, where Shaz somehow escapes Gremmy's control, using a power he has named V, the Viability. By absorbing Reishi from his surroundings, Shaz can replace body parts over time, but he has no real control over it, as it happens automatically when he ascended to the position of Sternritter by Yhwach. he renamed the viability to the Sigma, distinguishing himself from Grimmy. Nyansel Weisel wields W, the wind, or known as twists and turns in Japanese. This Schrift grants him the power to forcibly bend and redirect attacks. Any strike aimed at him or his chosen targets is automatically warped away, making direct hits impossible. This ability works on physical weapons, elemental attacks, and even threats he cannot see. His most lethal application involves pointing at targets. He can warp weapons with a gesture, and even twist opponents' bodies until they split apart. Lil Baro is the first person to ever receive this Schrift directly from Yhwach, and he wields the Schrift designated by the letter X, the X-axis, or known as piercing everything in Japanese. This Schrift allows Lil to shoot through anything on the X-axis. Anything within his line of sight is destroyed with perfect accuracy, whilst also being impossible to block. If Lil is backed up against a corner exactly 3 times during a fight, he's able to open his second eye and unleash his true power, becoming intangible to enemy attacks, making him nearly impossible to wound him at all. And while using his Volstan Ditch, the X-axis gets enhanced, where he can now fire multiple light-made shots at his opponents, with power that could destroy large portions of a city. There is one critical weakness to his Schrift though. If Lil's Helix line is destroyed, he can no longer phase through attacks. Lloyd and Void Lloyd Schrift, Y, the Yourself, allows them to transform into the exact physical likeness of someone else, yet the two of them have slightly different abilities. Lloyd can take on the powers and abilities of someone, while Void can copy their exact memories and personality. Gazelle Jewel Schrift, the Schrift designated by Zed, the zombie, is wielded by the Sternritter, Gazelle Jewel. With a splash of her blood, Shinigamis can be turned into corpse puppets that follow her orders. She can't use this Schrift on a living Quincy, but she can on dead ones. She has total control of those under her influences to use their abilities. The amount of blood required to zombify is dependent on how much Ryatsu they have. Average Shinigami require just a single drop. However, for captain ranked individuals, she needs to get to their heart and diffuse it to their entire body. And that's also the reason why those Shinigami have a different skin color. Apart from that, she can also use her Schrift to heal her own allies. She can use flesh from other corpses in order to rebuild lost limbs or reattach lost ones entirely. Lastly, thanks to her Schrift, Gazelle is able to survive usually fatal wounds, making her quote-unquote unkillable. Yhwach is the emperor of the Wandenreich, progenitor of the Quincy's, and the son of the Soul King himself. He designated himself with the power A for the Almighty. When activated, it grants the user Omni Precognition. This ability splits the user's iris and allows him to view every single possibility and event from the present to the far future. He can outright alter his future to whatever outcome he desires. He does this by setting up traps, knowing where his opponents would be, outmaneuvering countermeasures before they're conceived, or even altering futures where he has died, in which the last remnants of power would attempt to resurface 10 years later. If that's not OP enough, the Almighty also gives Yhwach the power to ally himself with any ability he knows through the Schrift. Upon knowing Ichibe Hyosube's control over everything black, the power now takes Yhwach's side, being unable to damage him no matter what. Apart from that, with the Almighty, Yhwach can also absorb other beings, even things of higher planes, and gain access to their strength. The amount of time it takes to make someone's strength completely his own can vary between the difference in power. Let me know down in the comments whose Schrift you think is most interesting or broken, and let me know why. And anyways, click this video right here to learn about every OP character in anime.